Okay, guys. Today, obviously, I was going to say what we're talking about, but I think the title makes it rather obvious, especially with the whole situation with the Charlie Kirk shooting again. Once more, the issues of gun control rise up here in America. And as somebody who is definitely pro Second Amendment, I'm fully aware that for me, that still comes with guidelines and restrictions. So I'm not quite as hardline as are many on 2A, but still, I think that people are way, way off the mark when it comes to their solutions for ending gun violence, and those solutions being basically solely to regulate guns. The problem is there's the 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 obvious thing to recognize, I guess, in these situations is the gun can't ever act on its own. So it kind of irritates me that whenever there is whatever a mass shooting or in this case an assassination, whatever, the conversation becomes almost entirely how do we get rid of the guns? Because and you see that over and over. It's the guns, stupid. Well, no, it isn't. It's the people pulling the trigger. And even if you were able, and I don't think you are, I don't think there's any way. It doesn't matter what laws you make that you're going to get the guns out of the hands of people. But even if you did, you're not taking away the desire to do harm. And in that, I mean, let's go to the area of school shootings. The problem with school shootings, well, there's many problems obviously with school shootings, but the problem with the solutions for school shootings is when you say, well, we've got to have tighter gun restrictions, that's not going to solve the issue, simply because do you honestly think that if somebody is crazy enough, they've lost control enough that they want to go in and take the lives of a bunch of children, whether it's an adult or a child themselves, but in any event, that's what they want to accomplish. If you make it a little more difficult for them to get a gun, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're just going to say, oh, well, all right, I guess I'll just go back to living a normal life then because it wasn't really all that convenient for me? No, you're going to force people to get a little more creative. And this is something I'm going to say I stand behind, but you will understand why I can't get specific about it. It would be wildly irresponsible to get specific about this. But trust me when I tell you, if you want to take out a bunch of people at once, guns aren't the most effective means of doing so. I'm going to talk more. I'll take a couple. I'll read a couple of comments first. Ashman, Curtis, school shooting is exclusively an American problem. You understand that? Don't talk down to me. I'm well aware of it being an American problem. Even in Russia, warmongering state of mind, we have much, much less this type not even existent. Has absolutely, you can't compare the societies of America with any other country in the nation. This is a nation built on guns. This is a nation that has always been about guns. We built our freedom. We built this nation on guns. It's not like Europe where, your freedoms were, your battles for your freedom were fought with blades. There is a gun culture here, and much, much, much more important than that, we have issues of deranged individuals, I fully believe, that exceed any other civilized nations. We have serious problems here with people. Every country has mental health problems. I don't think others achieve our pure numbers for people who have issues to the point where they want to take out A bunch of people, I mean, that's their goal. They see things that they don't like. They see people they don't like. They see situations they don't like. And their mind immediately goes to, I got to eliminate that. And I don't think, from what I've been able to see, I don't live there. I can only judge by, what I read, what I see statistically. There's any other nation, any other civilized nation that has an issue to that level. So it doesn't matter what happens in Russia. It doesn't matter what happens in Europe. I'll give you a much better analogy. You want to talk about, that's just an America problem, right? Well, instead of comparing America to countries that have entirely different societal structure, why don't we compare America to America? Why, when I was a kid and I went to school, why were there guns everywhere? You would go out to the parking lot, and I've told you guys this before, you'd go out to the parking lot of our school, and a majority of the vehicles in every pickup truck would have guns in a rack, typically on the window, on the back window. Kids would get guns for their birthday, for Christmas, something like that. It was not unusual for them to bring it into school to show teachers, not just each other, to show teachers because they're proud of it. And the teachers would be like, oh, yeah, this is great, blah, blah, blah. Nobody was afraid because nobody was going to shoot you with a gun. Everybody back then, too, there was much more respect for guns and gun safety in general than there seems to be now, especially when you get into, a lot of our gun violence here. The majority of our gun violence is inner city gang gun violence. But we all knew how to handle guns. We're all taught from the time we were little, because we're going to be around them, how to handle them properly, how to be safe using them. So rather than compare America to other nations that have an entirely different societal structure than do we, what happened here? I mean, I can tell you what happened here, and I'm going to tell you what happened here. But do you know what happened here? Why was that the way just not really all that many years ago? Nobody was shooting up a school. There was no epidemic of mass shootings, and guns were easily as readily available, if not even more so, because a lot of the gun laws that are on the books now did not even exist back then. When I first moved to New Mexico, you could walk into a store, a gun shop, and buy a handgun and bullets and walk out with it, and that's it. And it was like buying a pound of turkey at Walmart. So what do you think happened here then? Let's just take that away. Everybody wants to compare our society to entirely different societies that have entirely different issues to deal with and entirely different, certainly, mental states. What happened in our own country? Why is that so different now? Oh, yeah, and that's true. Right, Big Green. Big Green says that's such a dumbass statement, too. School shootings are exclusive to America. Yes, and I should have brought that up as well. They are not exclusive to America. Definitely happen with more regularity here. I'll grant you that. But to say that they're exclusive here just isn't true. And also, hi, yes. And when I get looking up the stats and stuff, it seems like certain countries have serious issues with mass arsons as well, which struck me. I didn't know that. Australia, for one, has had a significant number of arson attacks. Rockvet says probably because that was part of the culture at the time. But the issue now is that young people are failing on understanding the value of life, and mental health is worse than ever. We're basically in agreement, but I can tell you exactly how that all took place. You're right. And I can tell, you could see it. In my lifetime, you could see this process taking place of this mental health deterioration around certain things. And I will, well, hold on. Let me read a couple more comments, and then I will tell you exactly what I think took place, what I saw take place. Jill says hundreds of millions of guns and easy access to them. The children are raised in a toxic environment where their mental illness is their fault, so society doesn't need to do anything about them. Hundreds of millions of guns and easy access. Yeah, I agree with you on that. But what I'm about to bring up, Jill, doesn't necessarily align with the second part, that their mental illness is their fault. I think there are far more, I know there are far more avenues and far more places for a young person to reach out if they're having mental issues than when I was a kid. That stuff was sad but true. That stuff was just basically brushed aside. If you went to a guidance counselor, when I was in middle school, if you went to your guidance counselor and you said, "Man, I'm really struggling. I have, I have bad thoughts sometimes and blah, 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 this, that, and the other, and everything just seems to be overwhelming me." The general advice you got in return was, it'll be okay. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Think about all the good things you got going for you now. Get out there, champ. They didn't take that stuff seriously. Just like bullying, they talk about a lot of the violent acts that happen today are due to bullying, and that may be the case. But the fact remains, when I was a kid, they didn't even address bullying. At least now we address these things. When I was a kid, if you got bullied, they would tell you, you know what? You're just going to have to fight back. Bullies are always going to be there. You're going to have to fight. But well, ended up, I got bullied. That worked out okay for me. I didn't take anybody's advice. I just decided I wanted to fight back. That worked out okay for me. But a lot of people, it doesn't. Braxton, for instance, my son is the easiest going, most chill person in the world. He doesn't want to have conflict with anybody. But back then, you were just told, bullying happens. And if they did anything, they might go to the bully and say, "Now, hey, come on, now stop that." And then you would get it twice as bad because you would rat it on the bully. Retro Mint Man, thank you for the super chat. He said, "Lost some friends through the whole Charlie Kirk situation. Wanted to thank you, Curtis, for being so level-headed about everything." Well, thanks, Mint Man. I appreciate that. But I'll take some more comments. Let me lay out to you what I was leaning towards. When I was a kid, and trust me, societally, and the way that parents interacted with their kids was not, no matter what old people might try and tell you, it was not all peaches and cream. That a lot of the things they did were just asinine, that were accepted ways of child rearing. However, the one thing I can say they did well was you were always taught there will be repercussions for your actions. Even if that was just in getting a spanking or whatever, but from the time you were little, you understood if you do the bad thing, you're going to have a price to pay. And that was pretty much universal. At least from my friends, family, people I knew, everybody was taught that. It didn't matter what your demographic was, what part of the country you came from. The majority of kids were taught that. And then along the late 70s into the 80s, there started to be this shift. There was a cultural shift that a lot of parents were moving towards a different type of parenting. And this type of parenting said, well, for one thing, it's bad to tell your child no. Give them other options. That was a big thing for the longest time. It's not bad to tell your child no. That's why you're the parent. It's bad. What they used to do in my day that was bad is you would be told no, and if you ask why, a parent would say, "That's because I told you." I'm sorry. And if you ask why, they would say, "Because I said so." That's all you need to know. That's bullshit. The least you can do is explain to, if you explain to a child why the answer is no, the odds are really good they'll come to an agreement with that in their own mind. It's no because I feel that this could be unsafe for you because of this reason, or it's not something I find acceptable simply because of this reason, and that's why it's a no. But parents started taking on this approach of, well, don't tell them no, give them other options. So now you've already started to take away that learning about personal responsibility, and that there will be a consequence for your action. It got to where when I lived in California, this would have been late 70s or early 80s, there were several little leagues in different areas of the state where everybody involved in the little league, all the coaches, everyone, all the adults were told you are not allowed to ever say that a team or a child lost. You had to say there's the team that won and the team that didn't win. That's robbing children from learning about life. You learn so much from losses. Losses are so important in your life. You need to learn to lose. If you don't ever lose, it's hard to learn how to win. It's okay to lose. Everybody loses sometimes. It's a good thing. And if you don't want to lose, you have two choices. You can accept it, and then that's okay if you want to accept it, or you can work harder to get better and hopefully not lose the next time. We had a significant dynamic shift in how we raised our children in this country. And you have to remember, you can say, well, that's only a part of this society. And you're right, it is. There were still parents who were trying to bring their kids up, with certain values and beliefs. But when X, Y, and Z little leagues make it against the rules to say that you lost, that's still what the kids are taking. That's what they're learning. To say somebody lost is being mean. It's not being mean. It's a fact. You lost, and it's okay to lose. Learn from it. Try and be better. Try not to lose the next time. And if you do, so what? It's all about the adventure. It's not about the outcome all the time. But we had a dynamic shift that way, and now many years later, and this has, you guys, I think you'll agree with me. You've seen this here. This type of mentality still permeates society in the raising of children. And even beyond that, even in the way that the justice system now treats criminal behavior. This guy right down the road from me in Charlotte, this lunatic who cut the throat of that poor young immigrant woman, had been arrested and released 14 times. How can anyone be surprised that he did something like this? What kind of system do we have that refuses to give real consequences to people who do horrible things? This is the message we send all the time. And now we wonder why young people, or again, people in general, but specifically young people, don't understand that if they in the case of Charlie Kirk, they see something they don't like, or someone they don't like, or they hear things they don't like, the only option they can think of is they must eliminate it. They've never been taught to deal with a little bit of issue, I guess, or they've never been taught to lose. So if you got somebody protecting you all the time, as much as you possibly can from the realities of life, someday those realities of life catch up with you and bite you in the ass, and then you have no idea what to do. And then you get people up on roofs shooting guns at people. Jill says, I was surprised by the judge who released him 14 times, like, holy hell. And unfortunately, Jill, that goes on a lot. There's a lot of repeat offenders out here. I've always said, I personally believe, if you take it to the case of anybody who, I have to be careful how you word things, because we can't talk like adults on YouTube. If you use certain terms, YouTube gets their panties in a bunch. But anybody who victimizes children, the phrase reoffender should never be able to be applied to them again. You shouldn't get more than one opportunity, and we do it all the time here. Well, we'll put them on a list. Oh, okay. They're on the sex offender list, so yeah, it'll be cool. And yeah, that'll take care of it. Our system of justice, or lack of it here in America, actually perpetuates everything that we're talking about. Oh, no, there's somebody. There's going to be an activist judge. There's going to be somebody who's going to stand up and say, well, it's not so-and-so's fault. This person really didn't get enough hugs as a child, so you got to understand it from their perspective. No, you don't. They committed a horrible act. They're unrepentant. You can tell that there is no genuine repentance to them, and yet you're going to let them out again. This is what has shaped our society. That's why when I was a kid, you could have guns all over the place and nobody shot up a school, because you knew the you knew there would be consequences. But beyond that, even if you were getting bullied, it never occurred, because I was there, it happened to me. It never occurred to me to want to evaporate the people who did it. I wanted them to stop, and it sucked, but it never got to that extreme. Also, I think a big part of it too is there are so many more broken families now than there were back then. And by that, I hesitate to say single parent families, because while there are a lot more single parent families now than there were when I was a kid, that's not always the issue. I've seen, and I'll bet all of you guys have seen, I've seen situations where a kid has both parents, but both parents seem largely disengaged with the child on any real level. Sometimes that's worse, I think, than even having one parent gone. And then again, as I said, you have so many parents now. There might be two parents in the home, but they're both trying to protect the child from everything that they might encounter in the real world. And you can't do that forever. And your child can't win every time around. And your child has to learn that there are serious ramifications for serious actions. And that's not the way we do things here. And then we act all surprised when it bites us in the ass. Now, again, as far as 2A, there are certain things. I'm not as hardline as are many. For instance, I think if you are convicted, not convictions are important here, because you can accuse somebody of anything. If you're convicted of domestic violence, yes, I would say you shouldn't be allowed a gun anymore. Only because that demonstrates to me that you can't control yourself if things get intense. But as long as we keep trying to make ourselves believe that limiting access to guns is going to somehow solve these issues of people acting out in violent manners, we're kidding ourselves. And what's going to happen here, and I think a lot of the people who are the hardcore gun grabbers are the ones that want to get rid of guns in society, I think they realize this. What will happen is, even if you go through and you eliminate this specific set of guns from society, you can no longer own these in America. What's going to happen is there's still going to be violent acts. People will still be able to, you're never going to stop people from being able to get those guns if they really want to. Doesn't matter if you got rid of all of them in America, the 400 million or so of them that are out there now, which you couldn't do. Just like drugs. You can make them as illegal as you want. There's a market to be had. Somebody will get their hands on what they want. As long as, and I lost my train of thought, but as long as people have these violent notions, they're going to act on them. And as I said, guns aren't the only way you can act out. But it's difficult to address how do we stop people from wanting to hurt others. It's easy to say, okay, let's get rid of the utensil they use to commit the act. Oh, what I was starting to say too is with a lot of politicians, they're aware of that. So they know that if they, okay, we're going to pass this legislation and you can't own this type of weapon anymore. Well, we get a couple of years down the road, we see that, oh no, these things still take place. So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that politician is going to say, oh, well, all right, we'll lift the ban on them, it didn't help? Or are they going to say, oh, we're on the right track, but we didn't go far enough? That's what it'll be. It'll be step by step by step, knowing that you can't cure this issue by restricting access, but you can achieve what is your actual goal right from the start, is to try and make owning, possessing firearms illegal. And in America, that would be a bad thing, because we've got a significant portion of our society that want to do harm to others, and they will damn sure make sure they're still armed. Ashen Mint says, I am personally glad my father left my family. Ooh, he beat my mom. I'm sorry to hear that. And was aggressive. If I lived with him, I probably would be like, Yeah, it's sad to say, Ashman, but you're probably right. In some cases, it's probably better when, depending on the parent, it can work out better for the child if the parent isn't around. Well, that's what it was in my era. Sean, the Joker, says, I'd say teach kids from a young age that guns aren't toys, but they shouldn't fear them. No, because I was brought up, and again, I was brought up in a very rural area. But yes, I was taught about guns early on. And we're taken outside. Everybody used to go target shoot right in our backyard. There was basically a mountain well back in our yard, and you could just shoot up into that mountain. Uh, so what we did and what a lot of families did back then, before you ever even began teaching a child about gun safety, how to handle the gun, so on and so forth, they would take like a gallon bucket and fill it with some sort of thick liquid, syrup or something like that, and they would take a gun and shoot it and make sure that the kids saw what that bullet did, and then explain, if you use this gun incorrectly, it's not a toy. If you use it this way, that leaking you see out there could be your parent, your friend, your brother, your sister. You will get one mistake and you could end somebody's life. So that was drilled into us right from the start. And then they would say, okay, now here's how you go about using it safely. That's how it was done back then. Randy Bean said, we had an assault weapon ban from 94 to 04, Curtis. What fell between those years? Well, the thing too, Randy, if you look at that, that's a tough one, because if you look at the stats from that, I can't even, and I'm a stat freak. There are so many different statistics that came out of that era. Each side can point to that era and say it didn't help at all. Oh, it brought gun violence down. I'm going to have to do a deeper dive into it at some point and see if you can find real hard, because that's what I like dealing with. I don't want to know anybody's opinion. I don't want to see it in an article. I just want to get real hardcore numbers. Excuse me. Chrome says, Curtis, they don't care. They'll keep doing it regardless. We don't have guns here outside farmers. Knife crime is rampant. They're now talking about legislating removing the tips from all knives. That's insanity. And the thing is, people have to understand this. They're still inanimate objects. You've got to stop the person holding the object. You've got to figure out whether, and this is hard, so no politician wants to deal with something that's hard when they can get a whole crowd of people to cheer them just saying, okay, we're going to take that away. We're going to take that inanimate object that they used to commit this crime or commit this heinous deed. We're going to take it away from them. And everybody goes, yay! And then the next time, maybe they made it a little harder for the next person who wants to do something horrible to a big group of people. Maybe they made it a little harder. So now you made that person think a little more about how, is it going to make them become a normal citizen? Become a good citizen and just drop all that anger they have? Or are you going to let them come up with one of the several more effective ways of carrying out what they want to do? You'll never, ever stop what we've got going on here in America by making any specific number or design of inanimate objects illegal. Oh yeah, well, Mike, I'm not going to read that out loud, but Mike, that's why I say I'll mention it again, but again, I'm not going to go into detail at all. Guns are not an effective means of doing a lot of damage to a lot of people. They aren't. Alex says, The Simpsons Season 9 episode, The Cartridge Family, is one of the best episodes I've ever seen. Homer shouldn't have owned a gun because he did not have the proper mentality for response. Yeah, I think I saw that one. Isn't that the one? I believe he goes to buy the gun and the shop owner tells him that there's, I don't know, like a 1 week, several day waiting period. And Homer snaps on him and says, give me my gun now so I can shoot you, or something along those lines. Yeah. Yeah, it's some of their satire is pretty spot on. Waffle says no matter how far down you push it, a person will always have their hands or even just their voice. Right. And again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everybody in America who wants a gun should have one. No, absolutely, there are things that should disqualify you. My point is, whenever there's one of these tragedies or one of these mass shootings, when all the headlines are about the guns, you're not even making any steps towards solving the issue. You just aren't. And look at how many, what really kills me too is, look at how many of these instances, and there's been a bunch, including the Parkland, Florida one and everything, where all of the red flags were there, and the things took place that needed to take place for a person to be stopped, and local authorities don't follow up. That's a problem too, because we know we have this issue with psychos within our midst. And when you see something that's a concerning post, a concerning action, anything like that, and it's brought to the attention of the authorities, in this case it was brought to the attention of the school administrators, and you do nothing, you're certainly not helping the case there. Look Fun says before you get a gun, you should take a gun safety class. I wouldn't have a big issue with that. I don't think that's going to really help Look Fun. Only because, you can have extremely nefarious intentions in mind and still take the class. That might help a little, though, as you say, for accidental shootings and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. Jill says gun ownership and responsible use isn't taught in schools anymore. Correct. Combined with an influx of bullies of which the schools won't administer any punishments to make a difference. Well, I will say this, Jill. As I said, when I was a kid, bullying was rampant, and nobody even gave it a second glance. It was just, oh, well, you either got to stand up to them or just deal with it. And I do think there are a lot more systems in place now to try and prevent bullying or curtail bullying. The toughest thing there is I do think as a society we have been on the right path with trying to curtail bullying in schools. But now with the advent of online bullying, it makes it a lot tougher. That is certainly a more significant challenge than they had when I was a kid. But when I was a kid, bullying was not something that was taken seriously at all. It was just considered something that, well, when you got a bunch of kids together like this, it's just going to happen. Angel says this has happened so many times that people have gotten desensitized, and I wonder if that was on purpose. I don't think anything was on purpose. As I said, Angel, I just in my lifetime, you could see the trajectory of this happening. There became a societal difference in the way we teach our children, what we teach our children and what we don't teach our children. And this even goes back to the video I posted yesterday or the day before of the young woman who was freaking out about her friends. As I said, what struck me about that video, her video, and the only reason I made my video was what was missing when she was on her rant. Never once did she have a moment of reflection in there, of serious reflection in there. She never addressed the fact that, well, maybe these friends of mine didn't care for the fact that I was celebrating someone's death. And that's what I'm talking about. You have a whole sector of society now that just doesn't believe. They're narcissists who don't believe they can do any wrong. If something bad happens to them, it has to be the fault of someone or something else. And we have helped to create that. Like I said, when you teach kids that you didn't lose, you just didn't win. when you try and insulate kids from any type of dealing with their own consequences. I know when another thing, when I was a kid, if you got in trouble in school, the last thing you wanted to do is tell your parents, because the punishment you were going to get at home was going to be way worse than what the school gave you. And now we see it all the time. A kid can be an absolute monster, a brat, just disruptive, borderline psychotic. And you'll call the parents in, and the parents will come in and defend the kid. Yeah, it's not little Jimmy. He's not like that. And if he is, it's your fault. It's changed. It's really changed. And now we're paying the price for the way that we've structured our own society. Chrome says kids are becoming Fabergé eggs. It does have to do with identity politics and everyone is valid type ideas, right? It's just like I've always said about the everyone gets a trophy mentality. Now, believe it or not, okay, so again, let's talk about Little League. I'm not against that in Little League. If you want to give everybody a trophy at the end of the season, that's cool. It only becomes a problem when you also, and this is what a lot of society has done, you don't give out trophies for excellence as well. You can say, okay, this is the team trophy. Everybody gets one. Now, little Brandon, you're the MVP. You're the best player on the team. Little Sally, you were the best pitcher. You're getting our version of the little Cy Young Award trophy. You still reward excellence. And the reason they stop that is because they don't want the other kids to feel like they're inferior. Well, guess what? In this athletic instance, they were. These two kids were the superior players, and there's nothing wrong with that, and you're recognizing them for it. If that hurts your feelings because somebody else got a trophy, get better, work harder, outwork them. That's where it got hurt. It wasn't even necessarily giving everybody a trophy. It was giving everybody a trophy in place of recognizing individual excellence. And again, now this is how you pay the price in society. That's well put. Connor says it's not wrong to celebrate effort, but don't diminish success. Right. I can remember Braxton's always been a really good, level-headed kid. I used to coached his Little League team every year he was in. Now, unfortunately, what you see in a lot of Little Leagues, Braxton wasn't a starter just because Dad was the coach, because he wasn't the best player at his position. And so I would have a talk with that, not just with Braxton, with the whole team. It's like, this is how we do it. If you are the best, you'll be rewarded with being a starter. Everybody's going to get to play, but the starters are rewarded for playing well. And Braxton not only got that, he supported that. He said, Dad, and he used to tell me, Dad, I like playing baseball. But Nick or Ricky, they're like way into it. He said, they're way better than me. And he understood that. He just wanted to be part of the team. He wanted to have fun and play ball. But so many parents, that's not the case. Well, why doesn't my son ever start? And if you tell him it's because he's not good enough, well, then the shit hits the fan. And the league has to come out and issue an apology for having the gall to suggest that Karen's son isn't as good a player as the others. If this is what you're going to give kids for structure, if this is how you're going to teach them to look at the world, these are going to be the results, the things we see happening today. Indigo Wells says, everything comes down to people. People aren't born vindictive. It is something people grow to be, learn to be. I agree with that. Guns shouldn't be easily accessible, and social norms these days create vindication. Right. I mean, no, I agree with that. Again, I'm not a hardliner on 2A. I think everybody in this country that wishes to possess a firearm should be able to possess a firearm. If that comes with certain caveats, certain trainings, stuff like that, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. In serious situations, serious instances, I'm okay with people losing that right. As I said, one of the ones that always stuck out to me was if you get convicted of any type of domestic battery, if you can't control yourself not to beat up the people that live with you, then it's probably better you don't have easy access to a firearm. Now, right now I only have one gun. I only keep one for just in the worst case scenario for home protection. So I keep a shotgun. I'm pretty well versed on guns. I've been shooting guns my whole life. For me, I don't. For me, everybody's afraid of the AR-15. Well, see, the thing is, the AR-15 isn't all that special a gun. It's not even the best gun given the circumstance. For me, excuse me, guys. For me, in my situation, I would, excuse me. It's much better for me to have the shotgun. And I'm not going to go into all the gory details as to why. As far as security, my gun has a lock on it. The lock it has a trigger lock. So you can't go run in, pick up my gun and use it. Cause you'd have to try and find first, I don't even know that a hacksaw would do it, some sort of mechanism to pry that lock off, which ain't going to happen. Everybody could be long gone away from your threat before you could get it off. The only way you can unlock it is with my thumbprint or with a code. But that's what I keep. I am going to get my concealed carry permit just because you see the way things are going, and it's not a bad idea to have. And by having a concealed carry permit, you also obviously have a permit for a pistol. But that's the extent for me. But what happens now is, again, you get these mass shootings, and the AR-15, everybody, that's the big thing. Well, those are weapons of war. No, they're not. That's not what they use in war. But beyond that, there are other guns that are basically the same thing, but the AR looks military and it looks scary. You have other guns with wooden stocks that shoot at the same rate, have all the same bells and whistles, but they don't look as scary, so people don't consider them as bad. The fact is always going to remain: the gun can't shoot anybody by itself. Why do we not? And if you want to talk gun control, that's fine, but why is it only gun control and not, let's start trying to figure out why people want to hurt big numbers of people, why they want to kill big numbers of people. Ruger Mini 14 does the same thing as an AR, just saying, right, Noah. It's just that, again, and that will perpetuate forever, because you got to remember, now if you got some sicko who wants to go out and hurt a bunch of people, what are they going to get? They're going to try and get an AR-15 because that's played up in the media all the time as the ultimate weapon. They're not going to look greater into the details of it all and see, oh, it's not really all that special in the world of guns. They're just going to go get it because that's what they've heard is the ultimate weapon to use. Shotguns aren't, Angel, shotguns are typically used in hunting for like birds, things like that, with I can't think of the word I want, with scatter shot, with pellets. With my 12 gauge, you can load it with pellets or you can load it with slugs. Ashman says, why not do both? Do both to what degree? That's the issue. Why not do both? How far away do you want to take people's rights to owning a gun? And it is a right for us. Obviously, it's in the Constitution. You can't. That's too general. When you say why not do both, well, 100%. Let's see what we can do about trying to get our society back to a place where not so many people want to do harm to others, but then go along with what? What's the other side of both? What is your suggestion? Yeah, and handguns too, Gabriel. Handguns are, that's another thing a lot of people don't realize. Handguns are predominantly and by a lot the most used gun for vaporizing someone in America, and it's by a lot, because the the bulk of shootings, mass shootings, even worse. Depending how you define mass shootings, it's usually like 4 or more victims. It's taking place in inner cities, in gang situations, not even necessarily gangs, but drugs, inner city stuff. Beaches says ARs are made for civilians. The military grade rifles are way more expensive for a reason, right? And of course, very largely illegal. There are so many hoops you have to jump through to get to even own an automatic weapon in America. It's almost impossible to do. And again, I'm fine with that. SCP, thank you for the super chat. Says, I'm grateful that mass event people haven't figured out what explodey things are so much worse. Yeah. I'll tell you, it's scary. But because I think about these things, and whenever there's one of these mass events, I always think to myself, all right, could that have been worse? And it takes about 3 seconds. And I'm hesitant here because I don't want to go into detail at all. But it takes about 3 seconds to figure out at least half a dozen ways that could have been way worse. I don't want these people to get imaginative. Noah says part of it for the AR is just because you can find them cheap and they have a 30-round mag. That's why people pick them. Yeah, and now too, Noah, as I said, now it's become, and you have to understand, if we're talking about somebody that wants to shoot up an event, we're not dealing with a good thought process there. So what do they know? The odds are good they're not going to be necessarily gun people. So they know that AR-15s are typically the choice. Ashman, can we look at data and see what is the most dangerous weapon? I can tell you what's the most dangerous weapon. The one you're shot with. They'll all kill you. And prohibit it. I understand it's right, but if there's evidence to do more harm than good, then why to have this? Data and see what is the most dangerous weapon? That's, Ashman, that doesn't, I'm not being disrespectful. That doesn't make any sense. The most dangerous weapon is the one you're shot with. And now it gets into tough. I have to be careful how I say these things. Oh, okay. Let me put it to you this way. I told you guys I own a shotgun for home defense. That's not because that was the easiest gun to find. That was by design. Because an AR-15 is not the best weapon for every circumstance, and that's all I can say. And so, in other words, even get rid of AR-15s and like weapons, doesn't matter. A lot of times they weren't even the best choice to begin with. Chrome says, just under your local bathroom sink, there's a lot of worse things. There's a reason Curtis isn't allowed to clean. Yeah, keep me away from anything toxic. Yeah, I'm not. I agree with you, Nacho. I'm not going to read that out loud in the stream, but yes, you're right. Need a glossary of YouTube-friendly words. Oh, Big Green. It's so hard to keep up. It really is. It really is. Beaches says certain states made it illegal to have or own a 10-round clip/mag. Then some talk about a 5-round clip/mag. Yeah, again, they're just things like that it's politicians who are trying to score points by saying, look, I did something. Even if you do that, you know as well as do I how easy it is to switch out a clip or a magazine. You're not in a bad situation. You're not making any real difference with that. And I will say I like the reason that we have gun ownership enshrined in our Constitution, and that is, of course, to be able to do what needs to be done in the case of a tyrannical government. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. When you see the things that go on all over the world, and beyond that, and I guess not so much today, because I think if the world were to break out in world war today, and the only way America ever gets invaded would be if it was a world war, I don't think there's going to be anything left. But in prior years, it was always a good thing too, because, okay, let's say things do break out and everything goes to shit. Whatever's left of this country would be one of the few countries that could still defend itself, even if their military was disabled. Because there aren't a lot of countries in the world. There are some. Is it Sweden or Switzerland where almost everybody owns a gun? There are some, but in that worst case scenario, we're not the ones that are going to be getting victimized once the worst of the fighting is over. Tristan says AR-15 is basically tech from 1900. True. Semi-auto with detachable mag. Guns of that nature have been around a long time. Not these depraved shootings. Only since like 2000 onward. Our society is sick. Agreed. And no one, the one thing no one will ever convince me differently of, because I watched it happen, is that we are not to blame for why we have this society. We stupidly thought it was a good idea to stop teaching our children the realities of life. When you stop teaching them, as I said, about winning and losing. Losing is okay. Losing is a good thing. That's how you learn. When you start trying to protect your children from having consequences to their actions, you're not doing them any good. You're doing them a great deal of harm. And we have actively done all of this and more. And then we look around and see why these younger people don't have certain values, and we wonder how it happened. Again, I'll always go back to that. Anybody that's my age or older will tell you the same thing. Guns were everywhere when we were kids, all around the school. If you took my school's parking lot, middle school, high school, either one, from the 1970s and transplanted that parking lot into any school in America now, that whole state would immediately be shut down. And you'd see on the news where at, Duanesburg Elementary, where I went to school, at Duanesburg Elementary, or let's say the middle school, Duanesburg High School, middle school, they found a cache of guns that was enough to arm a small army. What were they planning there? There had to be a takeover. We got to get the FBI in here, find out what these kids were doing, because obviously they were going to rise up against the government, because there were guns everywhere. It was in the country. Everybody had their guns, whether it was for hunting or just a lot of times it was just for, because people, it's a sport. A lot of people just like to go out in the woods, or there are a lot of places you could go and shoot your gun at the time, because again, we lived rural, and they'll go out target practicing, and it was fun. Oh my God, I never even thought about that before. If you could just transplant those parking lots as is, it'd be hilarious. Lulaw says, as a massive gun person, the AR is not my preference. True with a lot of big gun people. It's an intermediate cartridge, basically a smaller hunting bullet. Battle rifles are usually using 308. And you can't even explain that part to people because the conversation becomes so unhinged immediately. And the most pathetic thing I hear when you engage this conversation against somebody who is dead set against guns in society, we have to do something. What the fuck does that mean? We have to do something. It doesn't matter if it's going to make a difference or not. We just have to do something. That's the kind of thought process that never solves an issue. Because as I said, it's difficult to figure out how we're going to get our society to turn back to the way it was 50 years ago, to where people didn't want to shoot up big groups of people. It's easy to say, oh, well, the inanimate object they're using to do it is the problem. No. Gabriel says, I recently saw an ex-Twitter post of someone who on Halloween was casually giving away handguns. Oh, that seems hard to believe. That's somebody else was talking about this shotgun. Oh, I didn't know Idris Elba had something to do with it. He says the actor Idris Elba pushing the UK to remove the points on kitchen knives. Oh. What? Oh my. What kind of thought process is there that makes people believe that taking away the inanimate object is going to solve the problem? Oh, wow. Beaches says if we took people away, would the guns be safe? 100%. Yeah, the guns would just be sitting around chilling, doing their own thing. I'll guarantee you not a one of those guns would fire on the other guns if the people weren't around. Joe says most other cultures treat guns as taboo, where in the USA it's more out in the open. That in itself can cause issues. Well, like I say, Joe, you have to remember America is a gun-based society in the respect that that's how this country was founded and created. We won our independence. We became a nation using guns. And I mean, I know you say, Curtis, that was 250 years ago. No. And I get that. But it does make for a cultural difference, a deep-rooted cultural difference. Over here, excuse me, you European folks, of course, if you're in the UK, your culture goes back so much farther than ours. I'd say that your freedoms, your battles were fought with blades. Hell, you go back to where they were fought almost with stones. So that is the culture of the U.S. Connor says humans cause 100% of murders. We need common sense human control. Yeah, and again, if you are unfortunate enough to be as old as I am, you saw this taking place. It was so clear, so evident that we were setting ourselves up. I mean, I wasn't a soothsayer. I didn't know exactly what this was all going to lead to. But you could see we were going to be setting ourselves up for problems. When you have a society of kids that are just not getting the direction that they need. Now, guys, we had a little issue here earlier today, actually, just trying to get Brax back from their trip. My wife just came home. I have to run downstairs and tell her something, so I'm going to leave you guys. I don't want to kill the stream yet. We're having a good conversation. I'm going to leave you guys with Spaz Chair for a few minutes. Anybody that comes in asking, please let them know that we'll be right back. But I just got to go down and relay something to her. I will be right back with the stream. As always, whenever I have to leave, please remember that I am an attention whore of the nth degree. I get my feelings hurt very easily, so do not allow Spaz Chair to become your favorite host over me. Should I leave? Oh, I gotta leave. Okay, you guys, sorry about that. I'm back. Hopefully, Spaz Chair did not get too much of my attention. Oh no, Tom, no win, Spaz Chair. I mean, this Spaz Chair and I are buds. It's not like the prior Spaz Chair that had to get slashed with the sword, with the katana. But still, the friendship could be irreparably harmed if I think he's getting more attention than me. And Jeff, and thank you for the super chat. And Jeff, also thank you for the super chat. Says, quick Spaz Chair, shut and lock the door. Come on, you guys. Stop. That would have been freaky as hell. There's nobody else here. That would have been kind of cool if I came up and the door was locked. I ain't one of those brave sorts. I wouldn't have tried to get in. I would just run away. Be like, okay, something's fucked up going on. That's from Reed. Thank you for the super chat, pal. Reed says, how do you feel about holding parents accountable when their children commit shootings with guns in the household? I think it would go a long way with restricting, banning guns. That's a tough one. If it's children, I don't know. I'd have to really think about it. As long as we're actually talking children, not like a 20-year-old child, because one thing's for sure, no matter how good a job one does at parenting, you can never guarantee an outcome. So you can't hold parents accountable for everything. But yes, if the child was able to get a gun easily in the parent's house, yeah, I could see there being liability to that. Yeah, and Connor says Curtis and Spaz Chair are one once again. Yes, we are. Big Green says, Curtis, you might have to cut this part of the stream from the VOD. Spaz Chair said some downright unhinged things about the topic of this stream. I'd take action right now, except YouTube doesn't like violence, and if I find out that Spaz Chair was undermining my thoughts on the issue, all I'm saying is the katana's right there. I'm just saying, YouTube. I didn't threaten the chair directly. I'm just pointing out the katana is right there. Lick says, our people are trained in poking pointy metal sticks at each other till one falls down. Your people are trained in pressing button on the machine to make the pew-pews go and make the other person fall. You're 100% right, Licks. I mean, and again, I know people, when I bring that up, will say, and they're not wrong, again, Curtis, you're talking 250 years ago. Right, but again, that is the culture. That has been the culture of the United States since there's been a United States. Here, we have learned that if there's trouble, if there's strife, if push comes to shove, like Lick said, we push the button or we pull the trigger and we make the loud bang and the trouble goes away. That's our society. Whereas, again, when you go over into Europe and, our history is nothing compared to you guys as far as duration. You guys were, as Lick says, poking each other with pointy sticks. It does make, you've never had guns be the center point of your culture when it comes to handling circumstances. No, did they really? Reed says UK banned katanas because of knife violence. People are never, and I won't list them. You can get rid of guns. You can get rid of knives. Does it? Do I have a twisted mind, or is it just as easy for the rest of you guys to think of a whole bunch of other methods one could go about doing a great deal of damage to other people? You can't legislate away crazy. The best you can hope to do is societally hope to make the crazy less prominent. Really? Randy Bean says the UK had an issue with that TV show Forged and Fired because of blade violence. my question then would be, do you, if there is someone who watched that show, Forged in Fire, they see those blades being created, and because of that, they were inspired to go out and stab a whole bunch of people. Do you really think that sans that influence, that was going to be a productive member of society who never hurt anyone? All I'm saying is, if that can be enough of an influence to get you to hurt somebody, they were going to hurt somebody at some point anyway. No doubt. Tom says, liberty, guns, beer, and Trump, LGBT. But yeah, as I said, that's our society. Guns have always been a part of it. Violence towards each other with guns outside of the Civil War has not always been a part of it. That is a very recent, at least, I mean, to these numbers, a very recent addition. It was the fire that forged them, Curtis. Right? Like, let's break it right down. Let's get rid of fire. Right. I get you, Ardith. 100. Trump is trans-based, Rick says. Trippy Hippie says, but how many people can you harm with a knife versus a gun? Okay, so now you're... Well, I think I can say this. All depends on the person. A well-trained person with a knife can do infinitely more damage than a poorly trained person with a gun. Now, if you're talking well-trained in both, obviously the gun can do more damage, but I'm not sure what point that brings up. Because of that, doesn't mean that the people of a society shouldn't be able to protect themselves from that person. But to poo-poo away knife violence as not a concern is absolutely wrong. Fortunately, most people that are crazy enough to want to hurt others aren't highly skilled and trained with the weapons that they choose to use. But how much damage can you do with a knife? You wouldn't want to know from somebody who's skilled with utilizing it. What about a tube that shoots knives? Unnamed security guard says there was that guy in China a decade ago who got a few dozen with a sword. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to weaponry, it all depends on, unfortunately, the acuity of the person wielding the weapon. Not only how well they use it, how carefully did they set up the situation in which they were going to use it. I mean, it all depends on the person. Lick said, we already tried canceling the guy who made fire. He's still tied to that rock and still getting his stomach eaten by birds, and yet humans still have. Excuse me. Oh, really? I didn't know about this one. Beaches says, Aikita school massacre 2001. A man killed 8 children. Oof. And injured 15 others with a knife at a Japanese primary school. Oh, boy. I didn't even know about that one. Oof. Yeah, like I'm saying, guys, you will never stop people who want to harm big groups of others from doing so. And this concept that guns will always make it easier or more effective is just not true. It just isn't. And again, in our country, to talk about is, okay, if you want to talk levels of gun control, that's a different topic. But if you're going to talk about ridding our society of guns, holy crap, you would be unleashing a world of hell on innocent people. Because the criminal element here is it's serious business, and they're not going to give up their guns. It doesn't matter what laws you pass. It's the funny thing. That's how criminals tend to work. They don't worry too much about the laws. I can give you a good example. The little town I used to live in had I lived in an area in New York that was rural and very, very poor. I mean, it it was our two counties. At one point, again, this is several years ago, but they were ranked as, I think they were in the bottom 5% for poorest in the state. Now, towards that end, you have a lot of people that do desperate things. In our town, there were two halfway houses that there were a lot of people of real questionable character staying in at all times. And while there was, there would be small petty crimes and thievery, you never had home break-ins. And you see those on video and stuff all the time. In the cities, it happens all the time. People bursting through a door doing a home invasion. Why didn't you have them there? Because almost every household had a gun, and the people knew how to use them, and everybody was aware of that. So you can never actually know how many crimes gun ownership or the freedom to own guns prevents, because it already prevented them. These criminals would be restricted to doing things like trying to find unlocked cars and scrambling through them and stuff like that. But there's no way in those communities anybody's breaking into your house. You know the layout of the house. The person coming in doesn't. And the odds that the person inside is armed is very high. The numbers back it up. There's nobody breaking into homes of people they don't know in areas such as that. Tristan says a lot of it is sick people looking to shock the world. If the media closed that door for them, shootings would drop, I'm sure. I think there's a lot to be said for that now too, Tristan. Unfortunately, to these demented minds, it's become a way of achieving notoriety, especially because it is something that happens far too often here in America. And a person knows, a sick-minded person who has no care or concern for the lives of others knows that one of the big perks of taking their big action is going to be lots and lots and lots of attention. Even posthumously, I think that appeals to them. Wow, Jill said there's even a consecutive stabbing 2 months ago in the amusement park here near my workplace in Canada. They can even slip knives inside the carnival rides with thousands of people. Yeah, you're never going to stop the evil people from committing evil deeds. And again, this whole notion that guns are the most effective way of doing so is not correct. Certainly in America, it's the way it's going to go because that's what people see. And probably better than some of the other options. You don't want them thinking about what other options would be, put it that way. If they're hell-bent on hurting a bunch of people, you don't want it to be somebody with an analytical mind considering all the possible ways to go about it. Beaches says, what scares a lunatic criminal more than a gun-free zone sign or an armed staff sign? Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, they are soft targets. If you know there are no guns allowed, it does make an area a soft target. And that's what I say about our communities. There were no houses there that you were going to consider a soft target because the odds were very good that the people inside were armed. Well, thanks, V. Edgar, good to see you, and thank you for sending out the membership. And Beach has got it. Noah says if they break in here, they will get to meet Mr. Double Barrel 12 gauge. Right. And that's the way it was, again, in my community back in New York. Nobody's going to break in. Nobody's going to break in if they care about their own health and safety, put it that way. And again, thank you, Edgar. Appreciate that. Edgar is V, just so you guys know what I'm talking about. Jill says, as for guns, it's a perfect storm of young men with no hope / future / friends, a toxic media environment, truth, and an environment super saturated with affordable deadly force. Yeah, I agree. And I would even take it a step further, though, Jill, and say even if you didn't have the environment super saturated with affordable deadly force, I don't think that's going to stop them from finding a means of deadly force. Like I say, the one thing I do know for sure is we don't want our psychopaths being analytical about things. And again, that's not. I could take individual instances, and obviously I'm not going to do that. No, if we're sitting around, if you guys could come in here and sit around the room with me, we could do that. Putting it out on the internet, I'm not going to go into individual circumstances. But if you look at, I'd say most, I'm going to say all of these tragic events, mass shootings, again, being careful with my words, they were not done by somebody with an analytical mind. Unnamed security guard said, right, it's easier to deal with than tackling the big problem nobody wants to deal with in America, the hugely inadequate way mental health is handled. I 100%. I agree with that. The inadequate way mental health is handled. And as a society, how we have unfortunately grown into helping create unstable minds, or not even necessarily unstable, but create minds that are not able to deal with real world consequence when they get to a point in life where they have to start dealing with the real world consequence. That's what's truly unfortunate. And again, for anybody coming in, I don't want to give the wrong impression. I'm not a 2A hardliner. You stay away from it. No, I believe I am full supporter of 2A. I do believe you can take an action that exempts you from those rights. And I do believe that doesn't mean the 2A can't come with certain modifications. But to think that things like school shootings and mass events are going to stop or even be significantly hindered by making guns a little less available. And even by a little less available, a nationwide ban on all guns still would only make them a little less available. It's just the fact of it. There's over 400 million of them in circulation, and a huge litany of folks who will be happy to provide guns to those who can't get them if they were against the law. Again, anybody that doubts that can look at the war on drugs over the last 50 years. Doesn't matter how illegal you make something, somebody's there to provide. Noah says, I see it every day working in medicine. The mental health system is so broken it needs to be fixed. And unfortunately, I just don't see it happening, and it's sad. I agree. And you know what? I know there's no way to split this hair. Tell me if you guys agree with this, too. You know what really disturbs me, too, is how in vogue it has become to a sector of our society, mainly our social media society, how in vogue it has become to possess psychological issues. Everybody, I think it's for sympathy or whatever the case may be, everybody wants to be a victim of a psychological disorder. Do you think? I mean, I see that all the time. It would be nice and not so overwhelming to the psychiatric community, those who want to help people with issues, if it were only people that actually have those issues to deal with and not a significant number of people who just desperately need attention. I think that hurts us a lot. I don't know why that has become so in vogue. And trust me, I'm not, obviously, there's a lot of people that have serious issues. I'm not pulling that away. But there is too significant a number of people who want attention. Beach has got a good example. In prison, as a prisoner, you're not allowed to have a weapon, yet they make and have them. That's a good example. You take prisons where, you're watched 24/7, you live in a cage. They have, they control your access to everything, and murders take place all the time. And a lot of the people in those prisons are the ones who might be doing those things out here if they were in free society. You think you're going to stop them or people like them if you make things a bit more inconvenient? Tyler says most of the time it's on a whim with very little thought out. That's why most say they're going to do it beforehand, hoping someone will talk them out of it. Yeah, well, that's the thing, Tyler. That's what's frightening is in so many of these cases, there were all the classic, and we've seen it over and over. All the classic signs were there, and even if they weren't ignored, because in many instances, many of these school shootings and so on, somebody had brought this to the attention of authorities. See something, say something. Something was said and nothing was done. That's frightening too. But yes, it is absolutely a mental health issue. But as I said, our changing society over the past 50 years has helped to create this, has helped greatly to create this. I don't know what the flashpoint was where we decided to start teaching children that it was okay to not face consequences for your actions. I don't know why we felt like it was necessary to protect children from having to lose in life, in a game or anything in life. You have a winner and the team that didn't win, not a loser. No, you lose. Sometimes you lose and you got to learn to deal with it. And if you do something wrong, there needs to be a ramification. You need to pay a consequence. You don't need mommy and daddy to go interfere and try and deflect you from seeing that consequence. And we changed. Though a large part of society changed over those years. And that's what we started to teach. And now we're paying the consequences. That horrible stabbing of that, Beach says, of that lady on the train last week was harmed by a man who had 14 charges with same-day bail release. We were just talking about that, Beaches. And that's just a failing of the system entirely. This is somebody who's telling you on 14 occasions I shouldn't be out there with the general public, and they just kept putting them back. Trippy says it's not seeking victim status, it's awareness. There are several people with mental issues that just mask because they don't want to take away resources from those who need it. Well, I think some people it is seeking victim status. Are there also people that have those issues and mask them? Sure, that exists as well. Absolutely. But I think you had two sentences connected there, but you're talking about two different things. But people seeking victim status, I 100% believe they're out there. It's become a thing. I think people really get fed on social media by having people come to them with sympathy. I don't know. I don't get that. Chloe, thank you for the super chat. Chloe says, the recent shooting showed how some messed up people are desperate for attention. Several of the bullet cases had edgy slogans on them. Right? That's another good example. Yeah. Yeah, and it comes down to just what we were talking about. Now, this is somebody we're learning more and more about this kid. And he was in a relationship with a trans individual. And I'm not blaming trans people. I'm just saying you can see where he was getting involved in a lifestyle that would be, or involved with people who would obviously be distinctly polar opposite from Charlie Kirk. And unfortunately, instead of wanting to challenge that in debate settings, whether online or in person or whatever, or unfortunately, instead of trying to become someone who can be an outspoken supporter of the LGBTQ community, he's one of these people that decided, well, this person looks at things differently than I do. They just need to be eliminated, not challenged, eliminated. And I still say that's a result of the way our society has become. Yes, Look Fun says that is why you hear I'm the victim when they're clearly in the wrong. Correct. Yep. Uh, J Dog says, I wonder what the shooter thinks with both sides disowning him. I'm sure he was hoping to be celebrated like Luigi was. I think people like that, if he can see what's going on, Jay, he'll just focus on the psychopaths that are cheering him. I think somebody like him will just block out what the majority of the world is saying and just focus on those who are celebrating what he did. And for the last word I got, and now again, this is stuff that is unsubstantiated so far, but I've been seeing, I guess, that the roommate is being very cooperative, but the shooter himself is 100% battling against the authorities the whole way. Jill says, I witnessed a very bad car accident once, and despite about 5 of us stopping to check on it, I was the only person coherent enough to dial 911 and call for help. Other people literally just froze. Ooh, that's bad. I mean, I understand that everybody's different and you can't blame anybody for freezing because they didn't do it on purpose. But yeah, that's unfortunate. That, I mean, anybody is shocked at first, but you like to think that's just a momentary thing before you take action. Connor says, I think a likely root of his motivation comes from the ideas that words can be violence. Right. This whole concept that opinions can be violence is asinine. And I still believe comes from that whole system of values that we're talking about. Well, this person sees this entirely differently than I do. And, I was told I don't have to face these things in life. Somebody should protect me from this. That's why I think things like people needing safe spaces from ideas just perpetuates the eventuality of things like this happening. Suck it up. If you don't like what somebody else is saying, challenge them on it. If when you challenge them on it, you come out on the short side of the debate, oh well, maybe your ideas weren't as solid as they thought they were. But that's not how people look at things. Edgar V says, Curtis, do you remember that one time when you straight up destroyed Smash Chair with a katana? We were just talking about that. Can we show chat the clip? Clip link on the next chat. I'd have to look for it, Edgar, if I can find it. Yeah, on maybe even during one of the reaction video streams or something. Yeah, we were just talking about that because I had to walk downstairs for a few minutes, and we were talking. And the katana is still right over there. Let me see if I can get Tiny's attention here. Tiny, not paying attention to me. When I want this stupid camera to do what I tell it to, it won't. I forgot the word command. Tiny, track me. Track me. Okay. Now, Tiny, we're going over here, Tiny. There's the katana, right? Oh, let me get it out of there. Right there in the corner. You can see right over here. So, if this Smash Chair, gets out of line at all, let's see if Tiny, no, it won't track my hand. Position 1. And now it's going to ignore me. Position 1. Yo, position 1. Tiny saying, fuck you. Position One. Thank you. There you go. Noah says, heaven forbid some people admit when they are wrong or on the wrong side of the debate. Yeah, I mean, I, and again, it comes back to that same mentality. You know, I've always felt that if you can prove me wrong on something good for you, I'm not going to, if I've been proven wrong, I'm not going to dig my heels in and look like a complete ass for trying to defend the indefensible. But Edgar, again, thanks for the super chat. He says, got to cut it short if you want them to see now. Yeah, if it, hold on. I don't, oh, shoot. No, it'll be easier for me, Edgar, when I'm on a stream where I have my Streamlabs set up to screen grab and stuff. Because right now I don't, because it was this type of conversational stream, I don't have anything set up to just grab a video. Green screened AI, I know, Chrome. But yeah, like during the reaction video streams or something, that'd be a perfect time for it. Jill says the people are part of the problem, but easily availability of guns is another. You can't let crazy and violent people get guns. Okay, and you can say that, but what do you mean by easy availability? A lot of people have misconceptions too about what goes into buying a gun in America. But you say you can't let crazy and violent people get guns. I agree with that. If you want to make laws against the crazy and violent people getting guns. But what type of hoops do you want to have the average, vast majority of our citizenship that owns guns simply to protect themselves or for recreational use or whatever the case may be? How extensive of hoops are we talking here? Beecher says politicians are mostly the stubborn ones because they're wrong. It's better to double down. Politicians and the media both. And on both sides. This isn't a one side thing. I've become so disenchanted would be too nice a word, but I'll say that disenchanted with both our national media and our national politicians. It's horrible. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll definitely can do it, Edgar. And just again, once I have, like when I'm doing my reaction video streams, I have stuff set all up in my Streamlabs here to just quick grab a video link or anything. Let's see. Randy Bean says, in my home state of Washington, you need an online class, done a background check done, and after that, you still wait 2 weeks. Is that for handguns, Andy Beans, or any weapons? Yeah, I think all states, don't they all have a waiting period now on handguns? New York has restrictive laws. When the shotgun I have now, I bought when I was up there. You had to fill out the forms and have a background check done. You didn't have a waiting period on that, but again, it's a shotgun. But yeah, you did have to have a background check. And I guess there are different levels of these background checks for whatever reason. This is what I was told. Some are more intensive than the others. I guess I went through the intensive one. Noah says Illinois has a 3-day wait period on long guns and handguns. Okay. Yeah, see, it's hard for me to say what New York's rules are on that because, again, I bought a shotgun. Coltrane says, I want people to serve in the military before they vote on decisions that get us into military conflict. Not North Korea. You don't have to vote, but to vote you must serve. I don't know, Coltrane. I think, though, the problem there is I see what you're saying, but if we get into a military conflict, the ramifications are going to affect everybody in the country. So I don't think you could exclude people from having a voice in whether or not we were to undertake that. Beecher says our state deemed concealed carry permits unnecessary because it was unconstitutional to need one. But didn't all the last I had heard, now I don't stay up on that as well as I should, those were all a few of the states had tried that, but they were all getting punched down in the Supreme Court. J-Dog says, here in Texas, I walked in, bought one, and walked out. Still had to go through the background check and everything. Right. I did that, again, just buying a shotgun. But yes, you do have to go through the background checks. And I do know, because I have friends that have had it happen, that the background checks, it's not something they do just symbolically. I know of people that have gotten declined because of background checks. Yeah, not a bad point, Coltrane. Like I say, that's the only issue I would have with that is, regardless of whether an individual knows a lot about the horrors of war, they're still going to be affected by it and should have a voice in that decision. Jill says, do you think politicians are bought and paid for by the NRA so that they don't pass even the slightest restrictions on guns? I think politicians are, beholding to a lot of their donors, which is unfortunate. The NRA doesn't seem to have, especially over recent years, as much pull as they used to. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but I think more so, Jill, you just have a lot of people that get elected in certain states, localities, regions, whatever, where the pervasive feel is that they don't want to be infringed on their rights to own guns. Could NRA money have something to do with it? Absolutely. Absolutely it could. But I wouldn't say that's the majority of the cases, because just in areas I've lived and the people I know and am around, a lot of politicians are just reflecting the wishes of the people they represent. Sir Blank says, but how would anyone stop the people from buying parts and building guns under the radar? Because that's becoming a lot more common than it used to be. Right, and 3D printing guns now, Sir Blank. And as I said, even if you were to try and outlaw guns in America, there's 400 million of them out here. You're not going to get rid of them. It would be impossible. Excuse me. Noah says, when I was working in a gun shop before my current job, I had several people with a FOID card get denied because of something that went on their record, and they didn't even know. Well, that's what happened. I shouldn't say a friend, an acquaintance that I know of. Same thing. He had no idea he had anything on his record. He was shocked when it came back. So, as Noah's saying, those background checks, again, they aren't lip service. They're actually background checks, because people do get stopped from owning guns. Yeah, Mago says, excuse me, don't think the NRA really has the need to pay off many politicians, to be honest. Yeah. I think excuse me, the majority of politicians that are reticent to do anything with gun regulation, it's because of their feelings and the feelings of their electorate more so than anything else. What about black markets for weapons? Oh, sure. If you were to make guns illegal, yeah, 100%, the black market would explode. Sir Blank says that Illinois required people to register their illegal firearms. Only 1% to 11% complied. Yeah, that would be the case no matter what. And again, it's a big enough issue here. If you try and implement something like that nationally, you could be opening up a can of worms that could have repercussions worldwide. Baldur, thank you for the super chat. Says, I think a big issue is disagreement based off locale. In a city, people view guns as an aid for criminality, while someone in a small town relies on it for safety and farming. Oh, yeah. Oh, I agree with you 100%. Oh, yeah. Location is everything. Couldn't agree more. And it's almost ironic that in the big cities, that tends to be where there's more resistance to allowing people to have guns. Those people are much more likely to fall victim to criminals with guns. So it's really, when you think about it, there's a lot of perverse stuff that comes out of the statistics in this whole, in the whole gun regulation wars here. But you're right. Locality is huge. Couldn't absolutely agree. Sir Blank says it takes 30 minutes for emergency vehicles to get to my home, so people like me have no choice but to protect ourselves. Right. Right. Everybody should have the right to protect themselves. I mean, unfortunately, we have a very, very significant violent criminal element here in America. Excuse me. And those people are never, ever going to give up their weapons, no matter what is said or done. So, yes, people should absolutely have the opportunity to at least try and protect themselves from them. Again, that doesn't mean there can't be rules and regulations around gun ownership, but it does mean that I would never, before not allowing people who have shown no reason to be disallowed from owning a gun to own one. Jill says, in some Asian countries, they can even build a real-looking gun made by bamboo tubes and sharp and pointed wooden bullet. Holy jeez. Yeah. Well, one thing we've learned about humanity in general throughout all time is when one human or a group of humans wants to hurt others, they'll find a way. They will definitely find a way. All right, guys. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to hang this one up now. On hot topic or hot button topics like this, I have to turn off the comments, unfortunately, because I've experienced this too many times before. Whenever we talk politics in a stream, you get a lot of people that come in later or people that are watching the stream and for whatever reason don't have the balls to just comment during it. They wait till after and then they go off on insane rants, typically a lot of name calling and just insanely stupid things they post. So I have to turn the comments off because I just don't have time to babysit the comments to get rid of the offensive ones or the ones that YouTube is going to find offensive, and YouTube can take action against the channel when they find these offensive comments. So I apologize for that, but I can't risk the channel on leaving those on. And there's the "we'll be right back," Big Green. Yes, and tomorrow is a reaction video stream. I had to leave now because right now we're dealing with Braxton and his fiance have run into some issues with getting home from their cruise. So I'm hoping the stream will go on as normal tomorrow. But actually, I'm glad Jill, Big Green, Chrome, all you guys are here because I know you're always in with us in the reaction video streams. If it doesn't show up at the usual time tomorrow, we're just still trying to get everything in place there, and I'll be in touch with you soon to let you know what happened. But guys, again, thank you so much for the conversation. This was a great time. I really, really enjoy these conversations with all of you. I appreciate that everybody stays civil and has a nice exchange of ideas here. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And as I said, if you can make it tomorrow around 12:30 or so, I'm planning on having the reaction video stream if you want to come hang out there. And thanks so much, you guys. I'll talk to y'all real soon.